Hello, and welcome to the Reach or Miss Show, the podcast for the customer-focused entrepreneur, where Hayut Yogev speaks with entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs about reaching or missing the critical point of approaching the right customer with the right message at the right time and place. The point where business success starts. And here is your host, Hayut Yogev.
Reach or Miss, Episode 13. Hey Reach or Miss listeners, it's great to be here again with you. We are on Episode 13 and I would like to thank you for all the comments that you are sending and the questions that you are asking. We love your comments, we are waiting for them, and we would like you to keep doing so and do it more. Let us know what you think and let us know if there is something that we can do better. And we are looking forward to get your comments. So I'm so excited to have here with me Jeremiah Gardner. Hey Jeremiah.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going great and I'm so happy to have you here with us today. Jeremiah Gardner helps organizations create value. He is an international keynote speaker and author of the best-selling book The Lean Brand and principal at Moves the Needle, where he has advised companies like GE, ING, eBay, Intuit, and Cisco in building their innovation transformation practice. He has been featured in several media outlets, including Forbes, the Huffington Post, Entrepreneur magazine, Lifehacker, and The Guardian. Jeremiah tweets on @JeremiahGardner and blogs at jeremiahgardner.com. I just shared your bio and talked about what you've done until now. Can you please share with us and tell us what you are doing and most passionate about today, and where are you heading?
That's a great question. First of all, thanks for having me and excited to talk to all those entrepreneurs out there. So I'm in California in the States. Right now, as my bio states, I'm a principal at a company called Moves the Needle. And we're really working to bring entrepreneurial spirit into large enterprises. And I'm really excited about that work because we're seeing, these large organizations transform, with hard work and time and effort to really practice some of the things that we've seen work in the startup world and in entrepreneurship. But ultimately what drives me where I'm at my best is when I'm teaching and when I'm speaking and when I'm writing. And so I really try to organize my life around that. And say yes to the things that put me in those positions and say no to the things that maybe don't allow me to teach or speak or write. And so that's where I think my future will continue to head. I'm happy to be there and happy to be, working with so many amazing entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs and on the forefront of really trying to drive behavioral change in the way that we build new value for our customers.
Yeah, that's great. I've noticed that you're one of the dinosaurs that's still talking about brand and marketing in the entrepreneur world. I'm kidding, of course. I'm trying to do that as well, but it was a nice surprise to find it out.
Yeah, it's a tough space. Brand in general is a very misunderstood thing when it comes to especially startups, but overall, I think it's a really tough concept to wrap your mind around. And so it's an important one for us to have the conversation about.
Can you just tell us a bit about the company, but more, I'm very interested to understand which tools are you taking from the entrepreneurial world into the enterprises?
Yeah, so specifically, we focus on really changing 3 core behaviors. And so if you think about any venture, whether you're just starting out or if you're as established as, let's say, an organization like GE, General Electric in the United States, there's a degree of uncertainty that we face, and the degree is much higher when we're just starting out or when we're trying to do something new versus when we've been around for a while. There's a lot of things that we've learned and that we know. And so if you think about, the difference between those things, the way we think about it is on one side, you have the execute side, which means it's all the things that we know that we've built an execution engine around, that we know how to deliver value to our customers through. And so we're constantly trying to obviously refine that and optimize it, but ultimately we're executing. This is where you see startups go out once they found some level of, customer market fit or product market fit, and fundraise, because they need to go and build the execution machine. Well, in the enterprise, the execution machine already exists. But on the other side of the fence, there's the search side. There's the things that we don't know. It's the uncertainty. It's the unknowns. It's how do we create new value or continually to evolve our organization forward to meet the needs of our customers and other customers, other market segments. And so when we talk about that side, that's where we're focused on, is the search. And when we talk about the search, we really think there's three behaviors that whether you're just getting started or you're an established company, that have to be in place in order to practice in the search. And those are, number one is empathy. And we talk about empathy a lot, and we can go into that in more depth if you'd like.
I would.
Sure.
It's interesting.
Good, yeah,
I would.
Good. So number one is empathy. Number two is experimentation. And number three is evidence. How do we make decisions based on evidence? So maybe we can unpack those a little bit more, and that would be useful for folks to understand those.
Please do.
If that makes sense. Yeah. So the first one is the concept of empathy. And some people have put words around this to call it, design thinking or customer-centered design or customer empathy. Really, the principle comes back down to understanding deeply the needs of our customers. And this means not just, sending out a survey and asking customers, would they like this or would they like that? It goes so much farther than that. It goes into trying to put yourselves in the shoes of the customer and ultimately understanding deeply their pains and their passions and who they are. So often when we're facing uncertainty, we start with things like demographics and surveys and general market research, and we try to go really broad and big. But demographics and market research don't define an early market segment.
Right.
An early market segment's really defined by, a shared pain or a shared passion.
Right.
And so regardless of traditional demographic kind of, categories, if we have a shared pain, with somebody else, they then become an early market segment, for that search work. And so empathy means getting out and actually understanding. I'll give you a couple quick stories if I could. Coffee is a great example of this. So if you ask most people what kind of coffee they like, and this is especially true in the U.S., on a survey, they'll report back that they like bold, rich, bold roasted coffees, as opposed to light roast or medium roast coffees.
Okay.
And you can believe that. It's great, right? You go, okay, well, the survey tells us that it's all about bold and rich and dark and coffee. But if you just spend 10 minutes sitting in a Starbucks and observing a customer that orders that bold, rich, dark coffee, what's the next thing that they do? Well, they turn around and they head over to the little stand and they pour in a bunch of milk or cream.
Sure.
And then they rip open a bunch of sugar and they dump it in there and they take their first sip and they say, ah. And the behavior tells you that what they really like is sugary, sweet, creamy coffee. And so that's the difference that you get into. And guess who knows that, right? Starbucks knows that. Starbucks' first ingredient is sugar. Starbucks' second ingredient is cream. And then in some of their drinks, they add coffee, right?
Yeah, that's right. The latte. However, I think in a way, it's also about how you're asking the question. Because I think that if this is one of the toughest things, because how to ask questions is a tough thing, actually. Because if you would ask, how do you drink your coffee, you would probably get the sugar and milk there.
Well, and even better. So this is the trap we fall into in empathy work, is that we start to ask hypothetical questions. So if you ever find yourself doing empathy work and your question starts with the word if we were to do this, or if we were to do that, or you're immediately asking the customer to imagine a scenario. They're actually using their imagination, the part of their brain that is imagining a scenario in which the problem exists and imagining how they behave, imagining perhaps your product or your service. And we get really untrustworthy results when it comes back to that. So instead, when we do our empathy work, I'm always coaching entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs and the folks that I advise to start your questions with things like, the last time you
Right.
did this, what was it like?
I'm sitting here with a wide smile on my face because this is exactly what I'm writing about so many years. So it's so great to hear that.
Yes, yes.
So many researchers went so far from that. That's great.
Yeah. So instead of asking hypothetical questions, we need to get better at asking historical questions. And so historical questions allow your customers to access memories, real memories that are rooted back in their experience, and to tell you how they behave. Even one step further than that is kind of the example I gave about Starbucks, is we joke about that being a customer safari, putting on your safari hat and going out and observing a customer in their environment, in their real habitat. And so the principle here is very simple in my opinion, and that is, the farther away from being in person, one-to-one with the customer that you are. So you can imagine the degrees of separation from being in person to being on a video call, to being on a phone call, to exchanging emails or social media, to all the way down to a survey. The farther you are away from that one-to-one interaction, face-to-face with the customer, the less fidelity you're actually getting from that interview. And that means it's the less amount of empathy that you're actually gaining to build something that actually solves that customer's problem. And so my challenge to entrepreneurs is always, if you don't put the time in your calendar, honestly, when I get asked to mentor entrepreneurs, one of the first questions I ask them is to show me their calendar. And I want to look in their calendar and see, have you prioritized time with the customer? If your calendar does not on a weekly basis have, a half day or a whole day devoted to being with the customer and building empathy with the customer, then it's really hard to then go execute on a product that's going to solve their problem. And so the principle is getting back to prioritizing that work, prioritizing that, and it shows up in our calendars, it shows up in our daily habits.
It's very interesting, and I want to ask you, you talk about different kind of customers, and you talk about enterprises, and then you also talked about how much you like to speak and teach and write, and I wonder, who would you consider your customers today? How would you define them? You're talking about entrepreneurs, enterprises?
That's a great question. So, in my practice with Moves the Needle, we exclusively focus on, large enterprises. But typically the customer there is not the large enterprise. So it's one of the myths about business to business work that we get into, is that we say, oh, well, I'm business to business, and therefore, none of these customer development techniques or empathy techniques work. But the truth is, inside of our own business, when you think about, let's take an organization like ING,
Sure.
The bank that we've been working with. Who's the customer? Well, is it ING? No, we don't show up in Amsterdam and stand outside of the ING headquarters and try and sell something to the building. There are people inside of the building, and those people have problems and passions that they're trying to solve as part of their job. And so, for example, for us, often we're interfacing with the CIO, the Chief Innovation Office. We're interfacing with his or her, VPs, people that are trying to build, programs and trying to build practices within the organization and trying to scale it. These are real pains and problems that they experience on a day-to-day basis, and they end up being our customers who we're building empathy with, who we're able to help and empower and solve problems for. And so in Moves the Needle, we focus exclusively there. For me personally, my book and, my advisory and all those things, what I'm passionate about is not whether it's inside of, a large organization or outside of it or anything. What I'm really passionate about are people that are chasing creating value. And so whether that be in a large organization or a small business or a simple, two-person startup, if you're serious about pursuing that change, pursuing creating value, that's my audience. Those are folks that I connect with and that connect with me, and it really weeds out those that are, and when I say serious, I guess the best way to describe that is the people that are willing to put in the work, willing to do the uncomfortable things to then create that value for their customer. There's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that fall into, I think, a watchpreneur category. And I'm not the most popular person to say this, but because they're unwilling to do the work. They're unwilling to stand in front of a customer and hear things that they don't want to hear. They're falling in love with their solution before they've ever actually talked to a customer. And so those things turn us into entrepreneurs. They really kind of callous us towards the outside world. And we start to, kind of fold inside of ourselves. And typically that's where startup failure exists. And so for me, the founders that are willing to stand in an airport and get there a couple hours early just to talk to people, to understand them deeply, the ones that are actually putting themselves out there and experimenting and hearing things that maybe they don't want to hear, and then incorporating that into their development of their product or their service. Those are the folks that I really connect with, and because I'm one of them, right? And they're one of me.
Sure. And I want to ask you, you told us a bit about your concept and beliefs, and I want to ask you, what is the best advice that you can give our listeners, and what do you think they should do or they should pay attention to in terms of customers' approach?
Yeah, so I guess the best advice I can give you is that truth never lies inside of your building. And so what I mean by that is that we can't, as human beings, predict the future. And so if we spend a bunch of our time trying to predict what customers will do and building funnels without actual data and launching product without actual validation around our risky assumptions, we're likely to fail. And so although all new ventures are likely to fail, how do you protect against that? How do you hedge against failure? And what I think about is that you have to embrace the unknown, and you have to get outside of your building, and you have to co-develop and build with the customer, meaning taking their input and their behavior based on experimentation, taking the evidence that you produce and following that. And it may not be exactly what you imagined it to be. In fact, very rarely does a successful startup actually end up looking just like you thought it would on day one or on year one. And so getting in front of your customers, having meaningful conversations with them, learning to build those skills are so important. And I'll make one quick other note about this, is that the truth is that entrepreneurship is both a skill and a mindset. It isn't just have an idea and pursue your passions. That type of advice is really, in my opinion, is kind of bullshit, right? We hear it all the time, get out and follow your passions and follow your dreams and all these things. That's not enough. That's a great start. But the truth is that this is a skill. It's a skill to practice empathy. It's a skill to experiment. It's a skill to follow the evidence and build a team and solve real problems. And it's a mindset. And the mindset is exactly what we've been talking about, accepting the uncertainty, accepting the fact that you don't know and that you have to go out and explore. Those things are the areas that we need to build in entrepreneurship, the skill and continually building our mindset that lead to success.
I couldn't agree more. I always say that marketing or really succeeding with customers is seeing everything from their point of view. Because the money or the use that we are looking for is in their pockets. You should go and look at what they feel and see, exactly like you are talking from the beginning of this discussion, and not being so sure of what you know. And I think this is one of the biggest challenge for startups.
Yes. Well, and here's why my hunch or my thinking around why it's challenging for us. And this goes a bit deeper and is really important to understand in this work, is that the choice to practice empathy, the choice to be in front of our customers, is a very vulnerable choice. It's personally vulnerable because it means that we have to choose to get outside of our comfort zones. We have to choose to listen to things we don't want to hear. We have to choose to know or to be told that we're wrong. And so that personal vulnerability, it doesn't feel great sometimes. And it's really scary when we're facing the first prospect. I've spent so much time with teams when I literally in the first hour of working with them, kick them out of the building and have them go out to find customer segments on the street, just freeze, just be paralyzed with fear. And the step isn't that, that's fun. It's that if you don't do it, the first time, then that fear will control your development. And so it gets better. The first time you do it, you learn that you can do it and that you come out okay. And the second time you do it, and the third time. And so at this point, it's just a muscle for me, personally. I have no problem hearing things I don't want to hear or being told I'm wrong because I know I am. And so the vulnerability, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, if you're an aspiring entrepreneur, or let's say, you've got your first set of seed round or wherever you are in that journey, if you're not willing to be vulnerable, you're going to have a really hard time in finding success in your new venture because it requires vulnerability from really day one, in order to go out and learn and prioritize that learning.
Thank you. I know you have a lot of successes, and we'll talk about them soon. However, I wanted to ask you, what is your biggest, most critical failure with customers, yourself, your failure, the one that affected your entrepreneurial or your journey the most? Can you tell us about this one?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I always describe this as panic mode. And so I've seen this a couple of times with different startups I've worked in, and even in the process of launching our book, or my book, I went through it. And that is that you've done the initial empathy work. You think you have a really good understanding of, what you need to do and how things need to unfold. And so you start to put that in place and you're seeing some traction. And then all of a sudden you hit this valley of death where nothing's growing, everything's stagnating, and you feel like there's a ticking time clock that is going to end soon. And so in those moments where I failed myself, very, very, publicly in some ways, I've switched into panic mode and I'm just reaching for any hack or tactic or even, short-sighted sales tactic that will drive up those numbers, that will get a little spike, that will break the deadlock. And I remember working, a couple of years ago on a team and we hit this valley of death. I remember I was in full panic mode and just trying to get anything going that I could. I'd written a whole, sequence of emails to go out and had, researched a bunch of, traffic that we could buy and all these things. And I remember coming to my team, just, probably a full sweaty mess, kind of saying, all right, here's what we're going to do. And I remember one of my team members just looking at me and going like, this is, is this rooted in empathy or is this something else? And it was a great question. And I remember pausing and going, oh my gosh, that's not us. That's not me. That's not what I want to do. And I'm in panic mode. And so the biggest failures for me always come back down to trying to find the shortcuts to make these things work because I'm scared or I'm panicked or I'm frightened. And when I rely on those things, I often do the wrong things, versus, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Can you be more specific and just try to describe what brought you to this situation of panic?
Yeah, so maybe I'll talk about the book one. So we had launched a crowd publishing campaign, and we had set a really ambitious 30-day clock on that campaign. And so the first week opened, we were blowing records out of the water. We had been funded within the first 2 days to our goal. And then all of a sudden, about a week into it, it flatlines. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And I wrote an article about it you can read on my blog, but our house almost burned down.
I looked for that.
House almost burned down. Actually my car was stolen. I went on a hike and came back and there was just a pile of glass on the parking lot. There are all kinds of crazy things that happened within this, 2-week span. And I remember feeling completely lost and just frustrated that why wasn't this continuing to go? Why were all these things happening? And that's when I hit that panic mode that I described. That's when I really kind of went back and said, how do I, hack this? Do I need to go buy traffic or what do I need to go do? And And what led me there was really this feeling that I had lost momentum and I needed to get it back on track. The truth is, in any, crowdfunding or publishing campaign, there just is, after about a week, a lull, and you have to accept that. And then it picks up towards the end. And of course, we went on to break some records and be a very successful campaign and all of those things. But it just took patience, and it took trust in what we had done, the work we had done, prior to it, to pull us out of that little valley that didn't feel so good.
It's a great story, and I would like to ask you now about your greatest, most significant success as a result of the right customer focus, or something that you did right about approaching your customers.
Oh man, yeah, that's a great question. For me, it's hard to crown anything a success, right? Because you're always pushing.
Come on, you have a best-selling book.
Yeah, yes, but yeah. Well, I guess
not to mention other things.
For me, maybe I'll tell a story here that I feel like is success, and that is, a few years back, I went and spoke at an event, like I often do, and a young entrepreneur came up to me afterwards and was just asking all kinds of questions of me. I mean, you name it. He had no self-awareness that there was a line behind him waiting, no self-awareness that, after the 10th question, I was kind of, ready to at least go grab a beer or something, after being an hour on stage. And was just full of this truly seeking knowledge. And I remember, thinking, wow, that was a lot, but it really passed my brain. It really didn't think much about it afterwards. And about a year and a half later, I got an email from someone I didn't recognize. And it happened to be this same entrepreneur, who I'd met a year and a half ago. And, he talked about how in what I had to say and in my talk and then in my time with him afterwards, how it just really resonated with him deeply, about how to approach these things, and how he had tried 2 other startups before and had failed, and that he had applied these principles back, to his startup for the last year and a half, and that they had just got through their first big round of funding and, were valued at a multi-million-dollar level. And I've gone on to build a good relationship with him. And for me, the reason that this is a level of success is not that, I said something so amazing. It's that it's all of the roots that I've put down in the empathy work. All of the work that I've done to understand the real pain points, around, founders that have gone through these things. All of that comes out, and impacts this young entrepreneur, to the point that it provides a quote unquote solution for him and something that he's searching for, and leads to a really life change, not only for him, but for his team, and now for, his company and the customers that he's impacting, and all of these things. And so it's a testament back to the fact that we don't know, the impact we're going to have. We can't predict what's going to happen in the future. But when we're putting in the work around the empathy work, and we're putting in the work around experimentation. Here's a good example of experimentation in my own work.
Yeah.
Before I ever write a line of a book, I'm working on a second one right now. The first thing
Whoa, this is a spoiler. What's this going to be about?
Growth. How do we focus on not just growth in our startup world, but what does it mean to grow? What does it mean to grow relationships and grow in our personal lives and grow in our family lives? What are the principles around growth? And how do we actually practice those? And so,
fascinating.
Yes,
okay.
It's kind of fun. It's fun. But before I've written a line of that book, a sentence, the first thing I do is I develop a talk. I make a hypothesis about what I think the main problems, and issues that people are facing when it comes to growth. And I go out and I start giving that talk, and I give it at meetups of 100 people, and I give it to large conferences, and I'm learning from the feedback that I get, from those talks about, what are the pain points that people are having? Where am I right in that? Where am I wrong? And so these are experiments in order to learn, personally. And then I follow that evidence, and I adjust accordingly. And so for me, the story of the entrepreneur that has gone on to find success is really a testament to these principles at play. And I have countless other stories just like that one, that have had an impact because I've put in the work around empathy, experimentation, and evidence.
I want to ask you, can you recommend the best, most effective technological or digital tool that's related to customer-focused marketing or sales?
Yeah, a cup of coffee.
Yeah, it's from the last story. It's the one with Starbucks.
That's right. I mean, honestly, I've said this on countless stages, and
yeah, I never heard this one. I must say, it's my first.
The most powerful tool in your toolbox when it comes to marketing and when it comes to product development, when it comes to any of this type of work, is a cup of coffee. And what I mean by that is it's a cup of coffee with the customer. Sure. And so, all of the digital tools that are out there, that it can be wonderful, but you can't automate a relationship that you build with your audience. And so if you're simply trying to outsource your relationship with your audience to technology, you're going to have a really hard time finding growth. And so what I always say is, the value for both your customer and yourself in a cup of coffee, which costs you very little relative to, massive campaign spends, it is actually exponentially different. And so, I am constantly finding myself coaching entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs that we have to be at the source of truth, and that's in front of the customer. And then that's going to inform which tools we then use. So, for example, as we learn about our audience, we may learn that the best tool is email. We don't know. Or maybe it's social media, or maybe it's Twitter, or maybe it's a meetup group. We don't know. And so every audience is different. And so until we learn, deeply from our customers about how to impact them, until we experiment with different tactics and techniques, we don't know how best to build our marketing engine. And so we take what we learn from empathy and from experiments, and then we build piece by piece our execution engine around that. And so for me, the tools are just an ends to a mean. They aren't the mean themselves. And so we have to avoid kind of, at every marketing conference I go to, there's always, all the cell phones come out to take a picture when someone shows off their marketing stack and all the technology involved. But to me, that's not marketing. To me, that's not brand. To me, that's not growth. To me, that's technology that's based on what they've learned in the empathy work. And so for entrepreneurs, we have to go back and learn one by one how best to build our relationship with our customers, and that's what leads us to success.
I love it, and I love the answer. I never had that answer before from my interviewers, and I love that. And I want to ask you, is there any service provider, like a mentor, consultant, advisor, advertiser, etc., that had a major impact of your customer success and can help other entrepreneurs as well?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, I think it's really important and that we undervalue the relationship we can build with a mentor. And so I've always had mentors, some of them good, some of them not so good, that have helped me along my path. I've actually just opened up a few spots on my coaching roster. So I take on a few select founders a year pretty much to coach them. And so if you're interested in that, there's a few more spots open that I've recently just opened up a couple of days ago that I'm happy to, talk about that with you. But for me, I think that
is great. And I would like you, if it's possible, I would like you to send me the link so we can share it in our show notes and people can use that.
Absolutely. But yeah, from my perspective, the best mentors I've ever had are people that have done it before, that are a little farther ahead of me, and that I, in some ways, I'm looking to understand how they approach different issues that they got into or challenges that they face. And there are also people that are invested in my success, and then I'm invested in their success. And so, for me, the mentorship relationship is so important, and it's something that is so vital to, I think, the lifeblood of any startup, and especially to a founder. And so my encouragement is, if you haven't yet found someone, it's not about trying to, I've had the opportunity to meet some amazing people, and it's not about finding, the famous person, the one that, might get you into the accelerator that you're looking for or something like that. Instead, it's about finding someone who's just a little bit further ahead of you, and listening and asking questions and being curious about what they did, and truly trying to understand them, and then also delivering value back to them. How do you deliver value back to your mentor? I think that that's critical, and I think it's a really important aspect that often gets missed.
Love it. What is the one thing, we talked about few, but what is the one thing that you are most fired up about today?
One thing I'm most fired up about today, that's a great question. I mean, I think that what I'm most fired up about is that I'm starting to see these skills embed themselves in our startup cultures. And
Wow.
why that makes me excited is because I believe that when we're able to, as people that are trying to create something new, that are bringing new value to the world and bringing new ideas to life, when we are practicing empathy and when we are experimenting and when we are following evidence, it truly is world changing. And what I mean by that is that the world doesn't need another app for the app's sake, or another, God knows, and not another speaker, for the speaker's sake. What we need is more of this connection and this understanding of one another. And there's a lot of forces, I think, in the world right now, and I'm generally speaking here, that are divisive, that are driving us apart, that are creating, go back to what's happening in the States and Trump's ridiculous wall and all these things that are literally physical barriers to connection. And as founders and as entrepreneurs and as people that are pushing those new frontiers, we have an opportunity to reject that notion that we're better separated, and instead embrace the notion that we're better together and that we're better when we have connection. And the way that we do that is through understanding each other deeply, trying to solve each other's deepest and most glaring needs and pains, and exchanging value, time and money and effort and referral. Those things are truly part of the human experience. And it excites me that I'm seeing people in entrepreneurship and starting new business, not to just make their next $1 million, but to truly try and create a lasting impact on the world. And I think that that's such an important aspect of what we do as entrepreneurs and the value that we provide to the rest of the world.
It is. There are many things that affect success, and I think every company wants success, but with entrepreneurs it's much stronger because that's all it is about. Among all the things that affect success, what is the most important factor that affected your own success?
There's a lot of people that would put the words, hustle or failure or resilience as an answer here. For me, the number one thing that has continually led to success is, number one, putting myself in a position where I'm at my best. And number two, continually chasing the unknown and knowing I'm wrong. Those two principles have led to the things that I would call success in my life. And what I mean by those two things is, number one is asking ourselves, where are we making the biggest impact? And so I have a lot of skills. A lot of us have a lot of skills, that we can do, that can potentially produce, money or wealth. But where am I making the greatest impact? Years back, I asked that question from a great mentor. And, when I answered that, it took me a while to answer it. When I answered it, it was things like this: teaching and sharing, and helping others achieve more than they thought was possible. And so when I started to organize my life around that, I started to trace back the quote unquote fruit of that work. And that's where success has come from for me. And then the second thing is, I still don't know. I don't have all the answers. Anyone that calls themselves an expert in entrepreneurship or in startups is lying to you right off the bat, because there's no such thing, right? We all don't know. And it's embracing that fact that I'm wrong and going out and trying to learn. Those two things, have led to my biggest successes, rather than any, resilience or anything like that. It's embracing I'm wrong and understanding where I make the biggest impact.
Wow, it's inspiring. And I just want to end our really fascinating discussion today and ask you, what is the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm very easy to find online. Just search Jeremiah Gardner. You'll find me somewhere. But I love connecting via Twitter. You can connect with me on my blog, on my website. You can find out about the book and book me to speak and coaching opportunities on there. But ultimately, send me an email, the letter J at jeremiahgardner.com. I used to promise I'd get back to you within 24 hours. That's kind of pushed out to about 72 now. My wife and I welcomed our first child into the world a couple of years ago, and so that's changed some things.
It changed everything, but
yeah. But I will get back to you, and I'd love to hear from you. And then the other thing I'd say is I publish every 2 weeks, a short, simple article, around these topics or around things that I'm thinking about. And so if you subscribe to that, there's about 10,000 others that are on that list that have built a community. And so I invite you to that community. I invite you to be a part and to participate and to write and to talk back. And those are the places where I think, the work gets done. So, and anywhere you want to connect with me, happy to connect.
And we will, of course, put all the links and all the possibilities to connect with you in the show notes as well. So our listeners are very welcome to look for them there. Jeremiah, I want to thank you for such a lovely, interesting, inspiring conversation.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad, and I hope it created value for your audience. And
you sure did.
Moving forward.
You sure did. Thank you so much. And bye-bye.
Bye.
And for you, our listeners, until next time, it all goes down to this. You either reach or miss. Keep reaching your goals and visions. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Reach or Miss Show, the podcast for the customer-focused entrepreneur. You can find all the information, links, and resources that was mentioned at the show in our website, reachormiss.com. See you next week.